Hello everybody, welcome to the Fabulous Picture Show. A big round of applause here for the multi-award-winning filmmaker Atom Egoyan. 12 feature films, and you're still going brilliantly as well. So tell us about this film.
This is a film which is constructed in a very unusual way. Things are not what they might seem to be at first, and the reason why they don't seem to be what they are not necessarily for the reasons why you might think they don't seem to be what they are. So it's a puzzle piece, but I think the emotional threads resolve in a really powerful way, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your response.
Thanks, Adam. Do you practice that? Because that is
really
good.
When I talk at the beginning, my mind gets a little bit as twisted as the narratives as the films might be. So
they are twisted narratives, but they always come together.
They do
beautifully and triumphantly. All right, enjoy the film. See you in the Q&A.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If we're having problems, you should let me know.
Who said anything about having problems?
With money?
With money? What are you gonna do about it?
Help.
How are you gonna help? You gonna sell your old video games?
Adoration focuses on Simon.
You know, I could get a loan or something.
A teenage orphan coming to terms with the death of his parents, until his teacher encourages him to invent a dramatic and false version of their
If
deaths.
the bomb had gone off in midair, as my father intended, all 400 people on board that flight would have perished.
He takes the exercise online, where it spirals out of control.
She's got this chat room, and they're talking all about Simon's story.
What do you mean?
And they're talking about what happened with your dad and everything.
How'd they find out?
Well, I told it to my mom.
If you think that you didn't ask to be brought into the world, then who did?
With his 11 features grabbing over 40 awards, Egoyan is the most lauded Canadian on today's film scene. His stories rarely unfold in a linear fashion, but rather shift seamlessly across time.
If you're dealing with people whose lives have been traumatized or who have lost a thread in their own life, they're very often floating. And they're floating through different scenes, and they're floating through different sort of threads of narrative, and that's really what inspires that language.
In the Oscar-nominated Sweet Hereafter, Egoyan shuttles between the cold forensics of a tragic school bus accident and the grief of a small community.
As a dramatist, what compels me first and foremost is just trying to lay out the complexity of what creates a human being.
You are so lucky.
Don't even try to remember.
Some critics slammed Egoyan for his star-studded, more conventional Hollywood thriller, Where the Truth Lies.
Life goes on without me.
But his most controversial film is also one of his most personal. Ararat delved into Egoyan's Armenian heritage and the mass killings of Armenians by the Turkish state in World War I, an event still widely unacknowledged. Turkish nationalists threatened to bomb cinemas playing the film.
These are people who had not seen the movie, but were just reacting against the title. It's a national symbol. In Turkey now, that mountain is called Agri. So the fact that you're calling it Ararat is an affront. When you make something which is seen to refer to an event as controversial as the Armenian genocide, it's bound to have an effect.
The idea that somebody would put their pregnant wife on a plane.
And with its theme of terrorism and its hidden aftermath,
the plane was going to Israel to kill everyone on the flight.
Adoration might be only slightly less controversial.
I feel people staring at me all the time, wondering why I would make such a visible statement of my belief. Where I come from, it's completely natural. Here, it threatens.
You wrote this in 2007. That's post 9/11. Obviously, there's a very strong undertone here of terrorism and the issues of terrorism. But the actual story here was inspired by a very different event, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And it was inspired by an event that took place in this country. Around 20 years ago, I suppose, the Jordanian man talked his Irish girlfriend, who was pregnant with his child, onto an El Al flight at Heathrow, saying that he would meet her when she arrived in Tel Aviv. And then at the last moment, he had changed his plan.
Why isn't he traveling with you?
He had to stay for business.
And unbeknownst to her, he had planted a bomb in her handbag. and at the last moment security found that. That story really left an impression on me, because I couldn't imagine anyone going so far as to using their wife, pregnant with their child, as a detonator, in effect. And this idea of detonation became really intriguing. And so in this film, there are a number of detonations.
We too believe that Jesus was a prophet.
I think the Jews believe that as well.
But not the Messiah, which is why they killed him.
Excuse me.
I found many parts of this film incredibly provocative, certainly when Sabine dresses up.
I mean, she's going there purportedly to teach this boy about how tolerant or intolerant his uncle is. But that's not really why she's there. I mean, she's there to gain access into this house. I mean, to wear that type of costume and to approach a creche and then start criticizing Jews is bound to raise some issues. And I want that. You know, for her to say, you know, this anti-Semitic remark in that context is so extreme.
Listen, your issues with Jews or Zionists or whoever you happen to hate, they have nothing to do with my life or Simon's.
It also meant to challenge the viewer as to why anyone would, first of all, present this scene and what the characters could possibly be up to.
He doesn't think you're very open-minded. I wanted to prove that you were.
For those of you who are familiar with Atom's work, you would recognize Sabine, yes? Did you know that Atom's married to her? You met on the set of your first film,
Yes, it's a classic story. I fell in love with the actress.
There I was, his daughter, in front of a naked man.
I was completely smitten by the end of the shoot.
Can I quote you? You said you always wanted to find an Armenian princess.
Oh my God, where did you get that? Yes, yeah.
Would you say something like that?
Yeah, sure. She was, yes.
She is a bit of a...
Where did you find that?
I lost my entire family in Lebanon. One day I came back home from school and they were wiped out just like that.
I couldn't help thinking about your history and your wife's history. Both of you have been detached from your origins and your heritage, and I guess so many of your films are about finding identities, and certainly Simon is a very potent example of that. He too is suffering a denial, and the denial of losing his parents and the trauma that he creates almost another trauma.
I was asking my grandpa a whole lot of questions before he died, and kept this on my cell as a reminder.
Yeah, well, he creates something which is potentially violent, and I think that so much of the violence that we see in our society is the result of some denial and some sense that we can just move on.
You have to believe me, Simon. Your father was a killer.
You've always been interested in how identity has also been recorded and shaped by technology.
Absolutely. But I've always used technology, I suppose, because it's a conduit. I mean, technology is first and foremost a means of communication, obviously, and recording and the ability to record history and store that history or to withhold it. That's been a really important thing. The way the grandfather is withholding this boy's history from him.
I was just telling Simon how much your mom loved Christmas.
And what I remember, Dad, is Christmas wasn't such a great time.
People need to know where they're from. I mean, it's a very strong impulse we all have. We need to know where we're from.
My father was giving us a gift.
Wow.
Simon, if you want to think that's a gift, you go right ahead, but I think that's cowardly.
Those conversations are real conversations by kids. I didn't script that.
It's not about concepts and an ideology and who's a martyr. This is about that this happened to his mother.
It was just about the structure. Was it something that you had a clear idea of writing the script, or as you were shooting, or was it something that kind of evolved during the edit at all? I mean?
Well, there's never a version of the script which is then broken down. That being said, it does shift during the editing process because a non-linear approach allows you to use editing as the final draft. From the viewer's point of view, it liberates them to construct their own interpretation as this is unfolding.
I was really interested by the soundtrack to the film. And some really great Canadian bands in there, like Godspeed and Silverman's Ion and that sort of thing. So I was sort of wondering at what stage in the creative process those came in, because in some ways they're already kind of soundtracks without a film to go to them.
Oh, absolutely. Those songs, as you know, are like 20 to 30 minutes long. And that there's a lot of shifts within those songs. That montage sequence where he's just driving, and I love that music, but I also have made notes as to what sections would be really useful.
You've worked with a long-time composer as well, Michael Dana?
Michael Dana has done all the music, and he does an extraordinary job coming up with the theme. Not only is it the sort of the clean violin, but then he also uses this extraordinary sort of effect called a flutado. A very ominous sort of sound. And it's not an electronic effect. It's actually it's a harmonic that a string player can actually use, which creates almost like a wind sound.
Is this all the money you're carrying?
Yes.
How long do you plan to stay?
2 weeks.
With this much money?
It's funny, he's been accused of being called chillingly cerebral, I read once. And
the earlier films were.
I mean,
now I've warmed up. Now I make really cozy, kind of like, family dramas.
Yes, they were very romantic scenes, weren't they?
Yeah. Mother plays like a goddess.
You seem to be having a good time still.
I am today, because I'm showing it to a really smart, engaged audience. And a lot of my life is spent, trying to drum up interest amongst people who just don't have time. So when you have an engaged audience like this, it's really makes it all worthwhile. So thank you.
You're all very clever. How about that, huh?
Thank you.
But you're quite clever too.
I'm only as clever as the audience.
I'm just kidding. Can we please thank here Atom Egoyan.
Disease, famine, we generate wars, we plan genocides. But occasionally, someone's got to take the matter into their own hands and wipe out a bunch of other lives.
Well, that's it for this fabulous picture show, and we've got to get rid of him now. He's got to go off and finish his film.
I've got to go finish my film, yeah. I'm going to start editing it in a couple of days. So I just finished shooting.
And you'll show us in September, won't you?
As soon as possible, so we can have a discussion again or something. That'd be great.
Another intellectual, stimulating discussion.
Intellectual, yes. No, and emotional and unpredictable and volatile and all those other things that are...
You don't have to be in denial about being an intellectual. I think it's a good thing.
Okay, you think?
Okay, yeah.
It sounds like it makes me like a nerd or something, so like...
we like nerds, don't we? We love nerds.
We love nerds.
Join us on the next FPS where we have some more nerds on the show. It's going to be great.
All right.
This is private property.
The road?
You're not on the road.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this film and why?
I'd probably give it an 8. Maybe that'd be bumped up to like a 10 next time I watch it when I fully understand everything.
I thought it was really tense and it kept me gripped throughout the whole film.
There's an adoration of homelands that don't really exist. There's an adoration of fixed identities that don't actually exist, which is what the film is really about.